You know, it's amazing how fast a major global partnership can go sour. Imagine this, two of the world's biggest democracies, working together on everything from space missions to advanced defense tech, with a trade relationship worth hundreds of billions. Now imagine it all just falling apart in a matter of months. Well, that's exactly the story of the 2025 crisis that pushed the US-India relationship right to the edge.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at just how good things were at the partnership's peak. Then, we'll dig into the diplomatic rift that started the whole fire. After that, the tariff shockwave that followed, the global consequences, and finally, we'll explore the fragile, uncertain attempts to put the pieces back together.
To really feel the shock of this crisis, you first have to understand just how close the US and India were in mid-2024. I mean, this wasn't just some friendly relationship, it was a deep, strategic alliance that was supposed to help shape the entire 21st century.
By the middle of 2024, this partnership was absolutely firing on all cylinders. We're talking a joint astronaut mission to the International Space Station, co-producing cutting-edge jet engines, and they had this huge goal called Mission 500, a plan to hit $500 billion in trade. This thing was built for the future.
So, how on earth did it all go so wrong, so fast? Well, the crazy thing is, the breakdown didn't start with some big policy disagreement or economic strategy. Nope, it started with something far more personal.
The whole thing really boiled down to two key events. First, in May, India publicly corrected President Trump after he claimed he'd mediated a ceasefire with Pakistan. Ouch. Then, just a month later, Prime Minister Modi turned down a dinner invitation. Now, according to analysts at Jefferies Group, these weren't just minor diplomatic issues. They were seen by the president as personal slights, and that set a really confrontational tone for everything that came next.
And this is the moment that personal friction explodes into a full-blown economic war. The response from Washington was fast, it was blunt, and it was absolutely designed to hurt.
By August of 2025, the Trump administration slapped a massive 50% tariff on Indian exports. 50%. To give you some perspective, that's one of the highest tariff rates the U.S. had put on any major trading partner. It basically put India in the same penalty box as countries like Syria.
So this created a huge disconnect. The official story from the White House was that these tariffs were to punish India for buying Russian oil. But, you know, a lot of analysts and critics just weren't buying it. They believe the real reason was personal, a direct reaction to being publicly corrected by New Delhi.
So you might be remembering, why didn't India just give in to all this pressure? To get that, you have to understand this core concept, strategic autonomy. It's really the bedrock of Indian foreign policy. It's all about making decisions based on your own national interest, not because someone in Washington or Moscow or Beijing is telling you what to do.
These tariffs were so much more than just an economic spat. They sent tremors right through the geopolitical world, raising some really serious questions about America's alliances, about stability in Asia, and about whether the U.S. could still be seen as a reliable partner.
And the reaction from around the world was pretty much immediate shock. You had major commentators like Fareed Zakaria pointing out that this wasn't just a bad policy move, it was actively undoing decades of careful, bipartisan diplomatic work from both sides.
And the strategic thinkers, people like Nikki Haley, they were sounding the alarm bells. The U.S.-India partnership was seen by almost everyone as the key to balancing China's power in Asia. Her point was that by weakening that relationship, the U.S. was committing a massive self-inflicted strategic blunder. And get this, even people from within the president's own conservative circle were highly critical. John Bolton, who had been a national security advisor, he called the whole thing theatrical, not strategic. He pointed out that other big buyers of Russian oil, like China and Pakistan, weren't getting hit nearly as hard. And this chart right here, it really tells the story of why New Delhi was so furious. India, a key strategic partner, gets slammed with 50% tariffs. Meanwhile, Pakistan, a country with deep ties to China, faced a rate of just 19%. That kind of inconsistency was impossible to ignore.
The damage wasn't just a one-on-one issue either. It started to poison other critical alliances, especially the Quad, that security group with the US, India, Japan, and Australia. With trust completely shattered, they couldn't even confirm dates for their leaders to meet. The whole thing just ground to a halt.
So with the relationship at its lowest point in decades, the big question became, is this thing even salvageable? And that's when both sides began this incredibly delicate dance to try and pull back from the brink.
As the diplomats started talking quietly, India's top diplomat, S. Jaishankar, pretty much laid his cards on the table.
He called out what he saw as Western double standards, basically saying, you're telling us not to buy Russian energy, but you're not applying those same rules to everyone, or even to yourselves.
But behind all the public posturing, things were definitely happening. In late October, you had Secretary of State Marco Rubio trying to smooth things over. The very next day, he met with Jaishankar in Kuala Lumpur. And then, at the exact same time, news breaks that India was making a pretty significant move of its own.
And this wasn't just talk, this was action. In October, India massively ramped up its imports of American crude oil to 540,000 barrels a day. This was a huge, tangible signal to Washington. It said, look, you can't force us to do things, but we are willing to address your concerns and find a solution that works for both of us.
And that really leaves us with the billion-dollar question. Was the 2025 crisis just a temporary storm driven by personalities and politics? Or did it expose a permanent, fundamental crack in one of the most important partnerships of the 21st century? That's a question that could end up reshaping the global balance of power for years to come.